This is the Aston Martin Heritage Podcast.
Welcome to another AMHT podcast. I am Gary Taylor. This podcast is in two parts, covered by our roving reporter Steve Waddingham. For the first part, it covers Neil Pickstone, who bought a 1935 Mark II saloon restoration project. It was a genuine barn find. The car had caused a bit of a storm in the Aston Martin community, as there was plenty of mutterings about the car being uneconomical to restore and you'd have to be brave to take that on. Neil and his business partner started a restoration project, and as they took the car apart, they found traces of metallic green paint and wondered if the paint was genuine going back all that far. A meeting was set with John Forder, the chairman of HMG Paint in Manchester, being leading experts in historic paint. They were about to find out if this was the first ever Aston Martin to be painted in the famous pale metallic green. In part 2, Steve uncovers the race to get the car ready for Pebble Beach. Here it is.
Growing the passion, sharing the stories. The Aston Martin Heritage Podcast.
Hi Gary, it's Steve Waddingham, roving reporter for the AMHT podcast, and today I am at a place called HMG Paint in Manchester, probably a company that most people haven't heard of. They're an amazing company. They go back to 1930 and are specialists in making vehicle paint. They often supply paint for Aston Martin restorations for various people. The chairman of the business actually has two Astons himself. And they deal in everything from brand new cars and racing cars right the way down to car restoration. So quite amazing really what they do here. But the reason we're here will be revealed in a moment. I'm going to introduce you to our two guests today. We've got Neil Pickstone and we've got Simon Isles. So Neil, tell us why we're here today.
Okay, so going back to 2019, I managed to look at an auction, saw an Aston Martin sports saloon, 1935, and in a mad fit of being left alone by my wife and being an online auction, I bought it. Without really knowing anything about Aston Martin pre-war cars at all, in fact, I knew nothing. I just fancied buying this car that was local to me in Liverpool, and I'm basically spending my retirement restoring it. So 6 years later, a restoration is all but done. But while we were restoring it, we discovered some panels, and Simon Isles, who's been working on the car for the last couple of years, getting the body ready and getting everything up to paint, discovered some interesting aspects of the colour of the car. And there were two panels discovered, both metallic green, and an internal part of the wing that was metallic green. And we thought, could it be the original colour? So having spoken to Stephen contacted John Forder, who's the chairman here at HMG, and none of us know whether today's tests or the results will turn out whether the car is actually metallic green. What I do know is no one believes it is a metallic green Aston Martin from 1935.
And just to be on sort of clarify this, really, just to clarify this, that you've already painted the car in this metallic green, haven't you? So
I did. So we just saw this panel internally. We decided that it was a nice colour. It looked good on the car. We'll match it identical. So what we did is not only do we match the colour, we matched the paint type with a cellulose paint. We built up a system, and actually it's taken Craig Isles probably the best part of 6 months to paint this car because it was so complex.
Yeah, and all of that in terms of developing the paint and matching it, that was done here at HMG, wasn't it?
Yeah, because we used HMG because the local to us in Manchester, Simon's personal friends with them, worked alongside them with the Aston Martin interest, and it just, for 40 years of the Isles family's relationship with HMG, it would be daft to go anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I think, from my point of view, the first time I ever met you was at that NEC Classic Car Show in the year that you just bought the car. Correct. Probably a few months after the auction, I think.
That's right.
And I remember being on the AMOC stand, you came on, and either you came up to me and we got talking, or somebody came over and said, there's a chap here, he's the guy that's bought that car, because it was a car that we all knew about. We'd all seen the auction, and lots of people had been talking about it and speculating on how difficult it would be to restore, because you could tell it needed an awful lot of work doing to it. To be honest with you, it was probably, for most people, not a viable proposition. It was that to have taken it to a professional restorer, it would have cost more to restore than the car would have been worth at the end of it. Yeah. But you're the magic people involved in this, because you've got the in-house skills between you and Simon to do the restoration, and therefore do it at your own pace and at your own cost. So you've saved the day with this car, really.
Yeah, the most important thing about buying the car for me was the rarity. There was only 22 ever made. There's 11 left. It was vital from my point of view that if I'm going to put my time into doing a car, then I've got to value my time. And valuing my time means that I don't want to do, and I'm not responding to anyone who's got a Mini or a Traveller or anything else like that. That's fine. But I just wanted to invest my time in doing something that I felt at the end of it, I could be both proud of and would be able to show off, if that makes sense. And like I say, my relationship with Aston Martin at that stage was non-existent. And literally, Stephen, I think you were the first ever person I ever spoke to from Aston Martin. And here we are, this remarkable 6 years later, and we're now talking about the same car, but in a totally different way. And I've had a great time. I have worked constantly on it. Simon Isles has done the most amazing restoration of the car. We honestly had no concept of the work that was involved in restoring it. And when I first met Simon working on the car just over 3 years ago, just before it went to him, I, at that stage, had this conversation that he said, you do realise you might as well just chop it up, make it into a false Ulster, and you will spend less money, less time, and it will be worth more.
But thankfully you didn't. And also, the metallic green, I remember, last year, because you and I know each other well anyway, and we were a year or so ago looking at the other car you own, which is quite a significant car, known as the Spy car. And we talked about the car then, and I think the car was in bare metal, and I said, what colour are you going to do it? And he said, we're going to do it in the original metallic green. And I think I did a double take and went, original metallic green? And that's when my interest got sparked at that point. But off you went and you did the repaint. And then a few months ago when it was done, and you told me that you were taking it to a studio to shoot photos, and I couldn't resist going along to have a look. So I came along the day, and then seeing the car, beautifully lit in the studio, looking amazing, I just turned to you and said, are you sure this is the original colour?
Well, that was the interesting day, because that was the day when you actually started making me doubt that it was the original colour. So so I asked you to help me and say, well, is this the original colour? And you said, well, I did a bit of work as a painter. I can't tell you if it's original. Who are we going to get? Who's actually going to stand up, who's a world expert in paint, and is going to validate this? Because unless we validate this independently, and unless we get someone who has no interest in the car to look at this, then it's worthless. It's just a sparkly green car.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really exciting. We're sat here now. We don't know what's about to happen. This could go one of two ways. We could either be leaving here today with you owning a really nice metallic green Aston Martin that turns out it's the wrong colour, yeah. Or you're going to drive away with a big smile on your face because we'll have proved that this is its original colour. And we've looked through the database of pre-war cars, and we can't find any other pre-war Aston that's in a metallic green. In fact, we don't think we can find one in a metallic colour at all.
It's making me nervous.
So, this will be the only one potentially. And if anyone is shouting at the podcast device you're listening on saying, no, I've got one in the garage, then do please let us know. But I don't think we've missed anything. So this really is going to be a big moment. And if this proves to be the original colour, a little bit of history is going to be made today. So yeah, let's see what happens. But before we do that, let's go and have a quick chat with Simon. Simon, you've done all the work on the car and others as well. So what did you think about the colour?
Well, I was fairly confident that that was the original colour from initially taking it apart. You know, it arrived on a trailer. Most of it was on the floor of the trailer when it arrived. But as you got the car in and you start taking it apart, it's almost like being an archaeologist. You find parts that have not seen the light of day for 60, 70, 80, whatever old the car is. And it's fascinating to see the true history of the car. Like we said, it's like a tree, the rings of a tree. You get to see the history of the car going back to its very early days. So as we were taking it apart, I was finding parts of the panel work, particularly on the inside or inside of the wing that had been inside the body, that had not seen the light of day for a long time. And particularly with this car that had been in a garage for 50 years, it's not been touched for such a long time. So it's less likely to have been restored and repainted in its lifetime. So as we were taking it apart and finding these parts of the panel work that are a green colour, and one in particular, the door bottom on the inside, that is a good match to what would have been originally. And that's where we started from. And that's what caught Neil's eye, and that's what we went with.
Yeah, I mean, it really is amazing. Right in front of us, we've got effectively 3 bits of evidence. We've got a rear wing, complete rear wing. And if you look at the back of a car like this, the rear wing, which is kind of got like a cross section that's rounded, part of that inner part of that wing bolts inside the body. So once it's bolted in, it's covered. So in theory, if you've never taken that panel off, whatever's underneath the body is going to be the original colour. And that's what we've got, a strip of this green paint, which appears to be its original colour. And then we've got a piece of metal that's the part of the inner door area that again looks as if it's the original colour. But the proof in the pudding will be what we're about to do inside the laboratory in a little while, which will be a test which will cut back through the layers. And
forensic.
It's very forensic, isn't it? Yeah. And they've got chemicals here that they can test to see what sort of paint it is as well, how it reacts to the chemicals. So we're going to know in an hour or two whether this paint is original. And I know John, the guy we're about to meet, he's quite, naturally suspicious about this and thinks that it probably won't be, but it's probably very old paint. But I'm actually putting everything out on the table thinking that I'm going to go with, I think it is original. And the reason being is because the car's had a very small number of owners and for a long time was kept off the road for many, many years. And normally if a car's changed colour, it will be because it's been through multiple ownership changes. But this car's only had a handful of owners from new. I think how many owners there? Was it 4 owners or?
The last family had it from 53, and I bought it off that family. And before that, there was 4 owners. So literally, there's been 5 owners plus myself.
Those owners, the first dealership.
Yes, yeah. One was a dealership, so it came specially ordered into a famous dealership in Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, this is another piece of evidence that I've looked at. And again, it kind of makes sense to me. If the car was ordered by a car dealer in Liverpool with a great big glass-fronted showroom full of exotic cars, brand new and used cars in 1935, if he was going to put an Aston Martin in his showroom window, and being a coupe, there's a lot more to look at than an ordinary roadster. So I think it could be why it was ordered in an unusual colour, to make it grab attention from people passing by. And by the looks of the history, within 3 months, somebody did walk past the window and buy it, and that's owner number 2. And then, like you say, it went through a handful of people, 3 of which were all related to each other. So with one family. And the fact that it was taken off the road in, did you say in the 70s?
It was it's the last tube ticket. So it was based in Liverpool, and there's little tickets that go through the tunnel there. And the last tunnel ticket was 1972.
So there's a good chance it's been off the road for over 50 years. And again, 50 years of nobody messing around with it, nobody changing the colour. the car, when you bought it, had got another colour of green on the top, which was hand painted, which we think was possibly done in World War II. In a kind of a semi-matte green to darken the colour down.
To make it look military, really, to make it look like a staff military car. I think that was the colour that was at auction. The pictures you'll see online about the car is that colour. But underneath that colour is a whole different ball game of green.
So the kind of the thick, it almost looks like it's been painted with Dulux or something. It's got a thick, brushed on layer of green paint, but thankfully they brushed it on top of the original paint, which is what we're looking at today. So, yeah, let's go and find out what's going to happen next. I mean, this is really interesting stuff. This podcast will either end with an amazing result or it will end up being a good day out in Manchester. And
remember, it's not the result. It's the journey.
It's the journey, absolutely. And my journey started at 5 o'clock this morning when I got in my car to drive up here. So let's hope and pray that it's going to be a good outcome. But yeah, thanks, guys. Let's go and meet John and see what happens next.
Early Astons were painted in nitrocellulose. It wasn't until the sort of 1970s that moved on to a single-pack acrylic system. We're talking about the original finish and the identification of the original finishes. So we're looking for nitrocellulose, we're looking for the original application, more than likely of a red oxide coloured primer. The people who we've related to on that, Jim and Bruce Young, MkII Batelli, are saying that what we're looking for is a first layer of a red oxide primer. We're then looking for like a layer of primer filler, probably white or grey. And then we'd be looking for multiple layers of top coat colour in like a green or a green metallic colour. So how we're going to do that, we're basically going to flat the panel back. We're going to rub effectively like a hole through the panel right the way through to the bare steel or the bare aluminium of the vehicle. Then we're going to look analytically with various reagents. And quite frankly, we're just going to see what we see.
If we turn around and say, right, well, that paint there is definitely always been on that piece of metal and it goes back to when that piece of metal was bare metal.
Yes.
But you could argue, well, what about if it was reskinned at some point and that's the paint at that point onwards?
Yes.
But the likelihood of that car having been completely reskinned in its original body shape in that era is so unlikely. And in fact, if you were going to spend that amount of money, you'd have probably just built a new body, maybe even turned it into an open car rather than a less fashionable closed car. So really, when we test this panel, the likelihood is the metal we're testing is the original 1935 metal.
Just a history of nitrocellulose as material. So nitrocellulose really kind of invented and patented by Duco, D-U-C-O, Duco, an American company in 1923, was a revolution in terms of car building. Everybody will remember, the Model T Ford, you can have it any colour as long as it's black. But the advantage of black paint, used bone black, which was oxidising to drying oils. And basically, it dried faster than anything else. So Henry Ford's trying to make a lot of cars. The big bottleneck was paint drying speeds. So the colour black was chosen because of drying speed. From 1920s through to the mid-1930s, there were massive advances going on. The importance of nitrocellulose can't be underestimated.
So it gave the buyers more choice in terms of colours.
Sure, in terms of it gave colour choice. But, if you weren't using nitrocellulose as a car manufacturer, well, you were waiting literally weeks or even months with traditional sort of coach painting enamels for them to dry down. It would have been rare, very rare, for a car to be painted metallic, original, back in 1934. Really rare. So, it's going to be really interesting to look at this later on, to look at this forensically and, quite frankly, see what we see.
Yeah, brilliant.
The sort of the gut impression on this is that it would be unlikely that it would be painted in a metallic colour. But I say, let's see what we see.
Growing the passion, sharing the stories. The Aston Martin Heritage Podcast.
So just describing the scene as the test unfolds, John is now using some chemical to basically rub on the original paint, and it's literally, as I'm watching it, you can see the colours sort of coming through from the chemical. And let's go to John for a reaction. John, I think that's concluding what we're hoping to see here today. So what's happening?
I just was not expecting this today. I probably should have listened to you with regard to this, because when you pulled it apart and did the rebuild on the thing, I just was not expecting this. It's a rarity, but it's clearly,
It's like a forensic or
it's
miracle.
Yeah.
You take your parts off and you can tell when they're empty.
Yeah.
And then you can find out how it was built and what colours.
This is like an archaeological dig, this.
It is.
It's almost like
it's absolutely
discovering some ancient tomb and finding that they've used concrete and then realising that, well, it must be because that's how they built it. And in a way, what we're looking at, and John, I think it's fair to say, in all your decades of experience with car paint and, seeing many, many things over the years, you were quite sceptical about this proving to be an original colour.
When I was driving to HMG this morning, I was not expecting this as an outcome.
Yeah.
Genuinely not. I should have listened to you, with regard to it, because you pull the car apart. It's really, really, really interesting.
Brilliant.
We've got to record this colour.
Well, I'm glad it is, because we've all driven a long way to get here to find out, but this could have just gone in the bin at the end of this recording if...
I thought you'd be going back. I mean, I did genuinely believe that you'd be going back, with information on the history of the car, but, probably somewhat disappointed that, we didn't think it was original.
We are looking at, we believe, to be the first ever metallic green Aston Martin, built in 1935. There we go. History being made. So we're looking at another panel from the car, and this is a, 2 foot long strip of aluminium. It's about 4 inches wide, and it's part of the body. It was an area of the car where, when the door opens, you could see this. And this morning, it's in remarkably good condition, this panel, the paint on it. And John's reaction this morning was, that's a later panel. That's been painted, same colour, but don't think this will be original. But actually, we've just tested it. And again, there's nothing underneath it. So it's smoking gun. This is original paint in incredible condition, really. It really is amazing. This would be like being in a building and discovering some original wallpaper, that you knew was the original wallpaper from a house being built 90 years ago. It's that sort of equivalent. And it's really important, isn't it? And it's just in the most amazing condition. It's been polished at one end and it's got some little spots of corrosion on it. But other than that, it just looks like fairly young paint, but it's 90-year-old paint. So amazing.
Growing the passion, sharing the stories. The Aston Martin Heritage Podcast.
Ace photographer Nick V is with us here today. Nick, familiar to many people, taking Aston photos. And Nick has just taken, a bunch of photos while we've been here, including a close-up of the rear wing, which shows you the upper test section, the small sort of oval shape, and then the larger section below, which shows that the car's been painted twice at the factory. So the upper section is exactly as John described what we would find if it was 1935 paint. So aluminium, red oxide, and then a grey high build primer, and then the green colour around that. That's the bit that was painted originally. The car was then obviously repainted again while still at the factory. You can see all the materials are exactly the same. They're just another layer of them. So quite interesting, really. Amazing that John almost kind of predicted this earlier, even though none of us were really expecting to see this unfold. So there we go. Look at the photo posted on social media to go with this.
Here's part 2 and the road to Pebble Beach, and we find out how they got on.
So here we are in November. the 11th of November, actually. And the last time I was sat down with you two guys was back in January when we met up at HMG Paint in Manchester to carry out the laboratory tests on the bits of your now beautifully restored Mark II saloon. And I think we rounded off that conversation with the hope that the car would be finished in time and that you might be accepted as an entry for Pebble Beach. So that was where we kind of left off, if I remember rightly.
That's correct.
So how did it go, Neil? What happened next?
Well, a lot of blood, sweat and tears, mainly from Simon. He was crying a lot, he really was. But basically, we got accepted in, which meant then we were on a deadline because we had to get to Pebble before, literally the week before, on about the 12th of August, we had to get the car there for. It had, at that stage when we met, it hadn't been wired. So the car was without wiring and the inside was basically not there yet. And we hadn't got the engine run. We hadn't started it, but it looked pretty. So that's where we got to. And then Simon and I literally, when it came to the end of it, by the time we got to July, which was the deadline for it going, probably about 4 weeks, 5 weeks before August, we were working literally 12 hours a day, every day for 2 weeks solid, getting everything going.
Including weekends. So there was, we start early in the morning, work all the way through, quick lunch, back on it again.
Quick curry or a pizza, whatever we could get.
Yeah.
Years later on, and then just carry on.
Well, I remember because at that point I was trying not to pester you too much, but I was kind of keeping in regular contact with you to not get in the way, but how's the project going? Is it all looking okay? And I because I've worked with you two guys before, I believed in this and I knew you were going to get there. But it was a hell of a mission impossible, wasn't it, really?
It was. We had lots of problems. Luckily for us, the mechanical side was perfect. That all went very well.
If you remember, the engine, we took the engine back to be run in, didn't we? Because we put the engine in for the photographs initially for January, but then we took it out again and took it back to Alan so that he could dyno test the engine and get it running properly. So he did that. We put the engine back in, and then Alan came up and started it up for us.
He did, yeah, and it was very good that he did because he set the car properly. So mechanically, we got the car working. It was fine, but the electronics and the wiring, because the whole car has been done to its original standard.
Just to remind everybody listening, it's a 1935 Aston Martin Mark II saloon. And the thing about that, the important thing about that is most cars of that period from us are open top cars, very little in terms of electrics other than lights and dashboard clocks, etc. But being a saloon, it's got a roof, it's got an interior light, it's got more trim and woodwork, it's got a lot more.
And not only that, every window opens. So you got the front screen opens, back screen opens, rear quarters, drop glass in the doors. And to get all that working and the wooden trim, because it's a polished trim on side rather than the touring cars or sports cars don't have. So there's 10 times as much work in a saloon as there is in a race car or a touring car.
Yeah, I've stuck my head in just before we sat down to record this, stuck my head into the interior and straight away it sort of took me back to the earlier part of my career when I used to work with post-war Rolls-Royce and Bentleys, and it's very similar inside. You've got a sunroof, you've got a fairly complicated headlining, you've got interior lights, you've got not only the opening quarter light windows in the back, but also the little rear window opens as well. So there's just lots more fiddly bits of chrome and just more things that move take longer than things that are fixed, don't they, normally?
Well, there's so many parts in this. I mean, it's so vast, the number of parts, that we even got to a stage where we have literally got all the parts out on tables and we're looking for individual small elements. The week before, the little handle for opening the door, couldn't find it anywhere. We literally had the whole workshop upside down, one handle missing.
Yeah, and again, that beams me back to early days of my career when part of my old job years ago was getting all the little bits ready for a car to be chromed. And if you got a pasting table and laid out all the pieces of a car, you'd fill up a table, wouldn't you, with all the little bits of...
We had 3 tables of pasting tables worth of parts, 3.
I can well believe it.
And we discovered literally a couple of weeks before we're supposed to finish, one of them hadn't been chromed.
Right.
So we had to ring up our very good friend now, Dave the Chromer, and beg him to fast track us through. And literally he did it in the weekend. So we got the part over to him on the Friday. By the Monday, we'd back collecting it to get it back onto the car.
And again, just to try and bring this alive a little bit for people that are listening. So imagine if you open the door, just one door of this car, you've got a door handle, you've got on the inside, you've got the interior handle, you've got the winder, you've got the little quarter-light catch that I noticed it's got a little lock that you twist up and down to lock it. And it goes on and on and on. If you get all those parts and then break them down into their individual components, because you've got to disassemble the parts as well, you end up with all these tiny little bits of chrome that have all got to get through a great big bath full of chemicals and come out the other side of it without falling off the hook that they're on. It's an awful lot of stuff, isn't it? You only need one piece to disappear.
And we had pieces disappear that we had to remanufacture. Simon was making things and we had to have them re-chromed. The number of screws, I can't even begin.
Some screws of all different sizes, different types of heads. Some are raised countersunk. You have some of the shanks on for some of the catches, for the opening catches for the front screen, because it's on sliders as well. Yeah, and also when it's being chromed, there's a thickness of chrome there. So when you get it back, it's not necessarily going to work again. You have to gently file it down and hope you can polish it back up again, or send it back in and get it chromed with the tolerances correct.
Yeah, the joys of car restoration.
Oh yeah. It was a long project. I mean, it started in when we bought it in 2019, and right in the middle of that, 2 years wiped out for COVID. And what people don't realise, I'm sure people do realise, but that COVID didn't just hit; it hit the whole supply chain. So even if you wanted and you got a manufacturer that can make something for you, a part for you, or you've got something that needs refurbishing, it took them 6 months to get back up to speed. And they had a backlog of 2 years of people working in their garage during COVID, getting all the parts together. The lead time for chroming went from what would have been normally about 3 months to nearly 12 months. In some companies were stopping it altogether because they had too much work on.
Yeah. And I think, what you're describing is part of the challenges of a restoration on a car. And I think most people that own cars are familiar with the idea. You take your car in for a service and, an oil change or whatever, and it might be X number of hours at X amount per hour. And, within reason, it should all go to plan, and that's the bill at the end of it. But when you're restoring a car, you could spend a whole week making the door fit properly, and that when the car was being built, it was probably built in a few hours. But when you're taking it apart and rebuilding it and making things fit that have come back from the chromers, I guess virtually every car restoration in the world probably consumes more hours than maybe a possibly charged for at the end of it. Simon, what would you say to that idea?
100%, yeah. There's hours you put into it. This thinking time, you put something together, it doesn't work, you've got to take it all apart again and go a different route, or put something on that you need to be put on before the bit you've restored that's already gone on. So you've got to take it apart again several times just to get it working again.
And if you try to itemise a bill and you actually itemised it properly, somebody exactly.
You don't want to keep a record. You don't want to keep a record. Enjoy the fun of doing it.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do a car for Pebble Beach, I think is the key element here. Pebble Beach is at a scale that no other car show in the world exists. The entry levels of the cars that enter it, there are over 2,000 entering. They say there's 120 cars on the field, but of which 40 are specially invited for a special category. So actually, you're entering 2,000 cars for what is actually 80 places. So your car has to be done to a high standard. So your photography has to be done. So the photography for this had to be done in December, which is 6 months before the car was finished.
Well, that's right. I remember us being together in the studio back in December last year. The car looking amazing, but as you say, wasn't really finished. But it had to look amazing because one of the ways you would get this entry through would be by showing it to, people that are sifting through thousands of entries. Why should this car be entered? Right. But amazingly, I mean, partly because you did such a great job on getting all the right information on the form, and there's an awful lot of effort has to go into laying out the history, which again you'd researched yourself, Neil, and the photos to support it. And then really, against all odds, beating thousands of, really well-known cars and car restoration companies, you defy all the laws, and somehow I kind of knew this would happen. I had a funny feeling about this car that it was going to get through, and partly because of you guys, but it did. You got through, you got accepted. Next thing you know, you're booking your flights and all the things you have to book for Pebble Beach. So how did the car get from the UK to Pebble Beach? I mean, that's no easy thing to do, is it?
It isn't. And there's only one company really that you can use. So, I mean, again, no one really tells you because there aren't that many people out talking about it. But there's a company called Cars, which is literally as it says, and they do the transport from the UK to Pebble Beach and back. Now, there's two ways you can get there. You can go slow boat or you can go by plane. We did not have the luxury of time to be able to send it by boat. And as you get closer to the event, surprisingly, the airport and aircraft people have understood that it's a great way of making money. So it's like a prime cost for getting a car flown over to the States. So it's a significant investment. But if you can afford it, it's a world experience, a once-in-a-lifetime experience that I couldn't recommend to anybody more. My wife, who is not into cars, had the best ever time she's ever had at any car event because of what happened. So getting the car ready for that event, Simon and I and everybody else that chipped in and helped, even making the coffees or bringing the food, everybody that jumped in and helped us, I'm really grateful for because I experienced something very, very special. I would say overall, you've got to do it. If you've got any chance, if you've got anything special that you think might be of interest to that event, and you can do it to the standard, and it's exceptionally standard. These cars are produced much better than they were ever made. The standard that Simon's built this car to, Aston Martin never built it to that standard because it was impossible. They had a deadline. We had to have this absolutely perfect, and absolutely thrilled that we got it there, even if we didn't get it test driven before it went.
Yeah, let's say that was the other thing, wasn't it? I remember you telling me, well, we've had it running, but we've got no time to test drive it, so we're going to stick it on an aeroplane and test drive it in America, and then you and your wife fix it if anything went wrong the other end.
Correct. And beg, steal and borrow any tools if we needed them, because there was all sorts of problems in shipping where customs stop you taking stuff out of the country, so you have to buy what you need there to use. But fundamentally, the car didn't miss a beat. And the best thing about that is that you do this Pebble Beach tour, it's called. So it's a 70-mile drive. The police block off the roads. They go out with a police escort front and back in chunks of about 10 cars, and you go up along the Big Sur, and there are literally thousands of people queuing up either side, taking photographs of these cars and waving, and it's an event. It's very, very special. But to drive along there and not break down, which we didn't, and pass about 10 cars that did break down, sadly, because obviously they hadn't got their cars to the same level, get there and back and not miss a beat was a remarkable achievement. But it's down to the engineering, and the car is an incredibly reliable car. It's an Aston. Despite what people think, they're very, very reliable at that age.
So it's just amazing. I mean, even if you just sat and wrote this out as bullet points, you take a 90-year-old car, you put it on an aeroplane, you wave goodbye to it, it flies halfway around the world, you then fly out and meet at the other end, and then it gets into a marquee, and you've got the things you brought in your baggage and managed to get through customs, and that's it. They've got to turn that car into a concourse prize winning car in a matter of days.
Correct. Yeah, and not only that, it's really interesting. I bought loads of soap dish bottles. So, the things you do to decant when you're traveling. I got 2 bags of those with paint, all the different chemicals I needed. I had loads of tools, all in my hand luggage, because I didn't want to risk putting it in the main luggage where my clothes were. In case
because you wouldn't be able to buy that paint, would you?
You couldn't get that paint anywhere else in the world. It only exists in literally in the workshop at Simon's. It's there. That's the only place it exists.
And you got that through okay?
No problems at all. We sneaked that through customs and everybody was happy. And that allowed us, and we needed that paint because we ended up, during the transport, it's going to be caught here, it's going to be chipped there. And we had to, and my wife who's very good at art, was able to paint and touch up everything. And literally it was a bizarre sight seeing 2 owners working on a car in a tent where there was teams and teams of other people working individual cars, and there is me and Liz painting, touching up and making it look smart.
That's amazing. And talking of the paint, because obviously by this point in the recording of the podcast, we've already heard that day back in January when we all stood there going, wow, look at that. That really is original 1935 paint. And thankfully, the colour of the car, is correct as it should be. How much do you think that colour helped get you in to Pebble Beach in the first place as an entry? And how much do you think it might have helped or didn't make any difference on the day when it was being judged? Do you think the paint colour played any kind of part of it?
Without a doubt, no question in my mind. When we first got the car, the paint was unknown. So when we bought it, it just looked like a dull hand brush paint, which was on the top of it. We talked about that earlier. But when we discovered the metallic green, even at that point, we couldn't agree fully about painting the car solid green, metallic green across the whole lot to make it look right. And once we painted it, it was the right decision. It was a big decision, but it was the right decision. That car colour was very significant because at the end of the day, it's the first Aston Martin with that colour. And having it at Pebble Beach and with Lord Montague, recognising it with the judges that went round, recognising it as being a significant car. It is a significant car because of the colour. It's a significant car. It's a beautiful car. But there's 11 other beautiful, or there's 11 total of these cars around. But this one's the only one moment that we found that has that metallic green. It makes it look spectacular. The light was fantastic. You'll see photographs by Peter Singoff and other people that have taken pictures of that. It stands out. And the queues of people taking photographs was just quite remarkable. So it is an iconic colour. It may not be the correct shade, but who knows what the correct shade is. But it looks correct. And it looks fantastic.
Well, and the thing is, it's matched to what you found under the car, and it's that paint that was tested that proved that it was 1935 paint from the technology of the paint, etc. But the funny thing is, I mean, again, you ought to really run out and buy a Euro lottery ticket in a minute, Neil, because when we were stood in that studio with the car looking like it's finished but wasn't really, you'd already painted it. So if in that lab it turned out that paint was from 1955, then this would be a whole different story. And you may still have got in, but I think
I would have got in for the look of it.
Yeah.
I think that the remarkable colour and the discovery that, down to you, Stephen, you're the one that reached out to John and HMG, and John, absolutely, as we already discovered, completely convinced it was a false colour. It was never the original colour. It's obviously been put in later. Yeah. And then to discover the fact that it actually was absolutely perfect and a perfect match, and all the hidden wing parts that had never been taken off. And the fact that it was hidden away in a semi-detached house in in Liverpool for 50 years meant it never got restored. So that paint would have got ripped off and been painted over had it ever been recovered, but it never was.
Yeah, I mean, I was just sort of reliving the whole thing in my mind. And I remember on the day, John's a very, very experienced man when it comes to car paint. He's seen everything. He's seen it all before.
He's very serious about it as well. He takes his job with pride but seriousness. He doesn't want to influence anybody with an incorrect story.
Yeah. And he's an Aston owner himself. So part of him obviously wanted it to be, let's hope and pray this is 1935 paint. But I could just tell on the day he wasn't expecting it to be 1935 paint. And as he was, literally unraveling it in front of our very eyes, the look on his face, which obviously won't come across in the recording, was genuine, like, oh my God, this is real. This is really happening. And he was just completely blown away, as we all were. But honestly, I think this year, of all the things I've seen lots of interesting things this year, but this will be one I remember for a long time. And then thankfully the part 2 of the story, which is you going to Pebble and what you achieved when you were there, it's just a remarkable, really remarkable story. And just tell us again that the actual award that you very deservedly got. Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So obviously these events are quite significant. There's on the field there were 120 cars. Of those 120, a remarkable number are British. There really are. There's the Rolls-Royce classes, there's the Bentleys, there's the Invicta this year. They're all and the Astons, there were Astons there. They're all very, very significant. So the Montague Bewley Trophy is awarded for the most remarkable car. And what they mean by that is that it has a remarkable story, it has a remarkable aspect.
And that's remarkable British car, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah, British car. Sorry, I missed that bit out.
Yeah, and you had some pretty stiff competition. I mean...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Bentley. I mean, Bentley produced, by their own factory, they produced a car that, if you looked at it, was, as you would expect from Bentley, at the very highest level you could produce. But we managed to somehow surprise, the judges were just surprised by the quality and the standard and the colour of this car that marked the start of Aston's association really with the metallic green, but was unknown.
Yeah, it is amazing. And we have been looking ever since just to make sure we haven't missed anything, and we cannot find another car in metallic green any earlier than your car. And it is a great story, one that none of us even knew about until this year.
We started talking about this 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Just the fact that I'd bought this car and we started the conversations and what help you could do in researching the history and all the things that you've been helping me with, Stephen. None of us expected this because it was unknown.
And that's the thing. I'm trying to remember the year that we first met each other. But the first time I ever met you, you just bought the car.
It was 2019.
There you go, 2019. I remember it was at the NEC, which we've just had the last weekend. And you walked up to me on the stand, you showed me a picture of it, and we all gathered around, oh, wow, this is the guy that's bought the derelict Mark II, because the car was, it was a fair bit of money.
Aston Martin.
Yeah, and I think after that you bought an EB24.
We did, yeah. I bought a 2.4 after that to do, and I'm still in the process of doing that one. It's not as exciting for me as this one became.
Yeah, but I mean, you have had a knack of picking up cars and things with stories, because another occasion was when you showed me the handbook you bought for the 2.4, which had Kate Martin's details inside.
eBay buy, and there you go. You discover inside an eBay buy one of the founders of Aston Martin's handwriting.
Yeah, inside an eBay book, a purchase of eBay, and it just happens to be Kate Martin's handbook for the last car that she had as an Aston. So
we discovered the Aston spy car story, and that was another one that Simon and I, we knew about the car, we knew some of the story, but to discover the fact that it was a real spy car was just beyond belief, and that's a whole nother.
That's a whole other story. I know, and that is a great story as well. And that's led to you writing a book. And honestly, in 6 years, between what you've done and what Simon has helped you with, it's just incredible the things that you've uncovered and brought to light. And
we still have one more to go.
yeah, well, we'll save that for another time. And I'm eagerly watching that car being restored as I've watched this one, because when we were involved with the spy car story, which again is probably 2 years ago now, you showed me the car we're talking about today, the Mark II Saloon, and you said to me then, I'd like to do Pebble Beach with it. My reaction to myself was, wow, well, that's a tall thing to achieve, you know. And here we are 2 years later, and you sat in the garage, its trophies sat in front of us on the dining room table where we're sat round doing this recording. So yeah, you've got my attention, Neil and Simon, and I'm looking forward to the next project when that's finished, and we'll tell the story of that one as well. But yeah, really, just a massive congratulations on what you've achieved. Almost, I wouldn't say it was impossible, but it pretty much was pushing the boundaries of what is possible to beat thousands of entries to get into, be accepted into Pebble Beach, and then come back with a trophy. And having never done it before, absolutely amazing. And I hopefully this might inspire other people that are listening that are thinking about doing this.
I would say if you're going to do it. Be prepared. It's a bigger event, but it's an unbelievable event. It's remarkable.
And would you ever do it again?
I said no. I remain no, not because it isn't worth doing. It's a bucket list item, and I've got more things on my bucket list I want to do.
Oh, well, there you go. That's a great note to end on. I'm not going to ask you what those bucket list items are, but I have a funny feeling that over the next coming years, one or two of those things may be Aston Martin related, and maybe we'll do another recording.
There'll definitely be another one.
Well, thanks ever so much, Simon. Thanks ever so much.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Neil as well for his enthusiasm and to be able to put his effort into doing these Astons and obviously putting the money into it to achieve these things.
Well, I say you've done amazing work on this car and also the spy car, which we'll talk about another time. And I just wish you well with the restoration you're working on at the moment.
Thank you very much.
Neil, great to see you again. Keep it up. Keep up the good work is all I can say, really. Thanks ever so much for your time.
You're listening to the Aston Martin Heritage Podcast. Discover more about the story of Aston Martin, the cars, the people, the history with the Aston Martin Heritage Trust. You're always welcome to visit us at our museum in Oxfordshire, so find out more via amht.org.uk.